Now.
Good morning, Alliance of Delray. Great to see everybody in attendance here. We've got lots of people attending right now. We're giving them time to enter the room. There are so many attending today. We have some important information for you. Our first big announcement is that about COVID vaccines. You know that the Alliance has been working diligently on this. We've written to the governor. We've been working with our county commissioners, getting all the information we can. We have asked for possibly having mobile units in our associations. We would help if there was any vaccines being given at the Civic Center. We have the manpower to handle signing people up and to get them to attend and give them times and dates. We can do all that to help our governor or our commissioners. And we're going to be hearing immediately after our first responders, we're going to be hearing from our county commission. Vice Mayor Weinroth and Commissioner Sachs are here to give us updates. Very important. And then we'll be hearing from our other elected officials. And just one other important announcement, since we're having so many elections now of our board members, the Alliance's board certification course, virtual, January 14th, between 6 and 8 p.m. We will have Joshua Gerstin, and I already have a lot of people attending that, and you will be able to also sign up and register now, and you have all the information on email about that. We'll start off with our Captain Sant. Please provide an update. Thank you so much for coming today.
All right, good morning, and good morning, Delray Alliance. Let me start off by wishing everybody a happy and healthy new year. 2020 was challenging for all of us, to say the least. So I'm hopeful that everybody's made it through, and we're looking forward to a good, strong year again this year. Before I go any further, I want to thank Chief Tozy for all his support, continued support from the fire end of it. The deputies and the firefighters and medics out there work hand in glove and supporting each other. So it's extremely important, not only to us at the Sheriff's Office and Fire Rescue, but as to the community as a whole. So thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
Let me just touch on crime for 2020. I'm very pleased to announce once again, even under the circumstances we were in, that crime is down again. In all categories measured, we're down 20 to 30% in all areas. We don't have the time where I go into the full categories that we measure, but just trust me when I say we're in good shape. We're really in good shape here in West Delray Beach. Let me just preface at this: that's not a time to let our guard down. Please continue doing what you're doing, locking your cars, staying vigilant, looking out for each other. And if you see something suspicious, please notify us. One other thing I'd like to touch on with that is our car crashes. I know there's been a big problem over the years with the traffic and the increasing traffic with the growth of the area. But I will report to you that we're down 21% in car crashes throughout 2020. I credit two areas. Number one, the compliance of people out there that are actually slowing down, giving themselves more time to get where they're going. And number two, our recent addition over the last year of our CMB unit, our commercial vehicle unit. These gentlemen out here are taking a large chunk out of that commercial vehicle, redirecting them around West Delray Beach off Atlantic Avenue. And the ones that we can't redirect out are now falling into compliance. That has a direct impact on our car crashes and our traffic flow out here. Let's move on to the scams. We still have recent scams coming in. One in particular I want to touch on real fast with you all this morning is our COVID-19 vaccine scam. I started getting some intelligence coming in that people are starting to give their Medicaid, Medicare personal information, their PIN numbers. Please do not give your personal information or these PIN numbers to anybody. Medicare won't call you. Typically, they won't call you and start asking for that information. Unless you call them and know exactly who you're speaking to, please err on the side of caution. Do not give this personal information out to anybody. These scammers will take advantage at any crisis they can. Last but not least, I want to let you all know we made a significant, and that's an understatement, but a significant arrest in the dinner time set burglary cases. I've touched on them throughout the years to be vigilant around dinner time. People are typically going out between 4 or 5 and 7, only to come home to their bedroom being ransacked and their jewelry or valuables being taken. This individual was, I hate to label this as good, but he was pretty good at his trade, but not good enough to get away from us. So stay tuned. He's in a good place right now, and we're going to try to keep him there. Other than that, I wish everybody, again, a happy, a healthy, prosperous New Year, and I look forward to seeing you guys next month. Take care.
Thank you so much for attending today, Captain Sant.
My pleasure.
Now we're going to spotlight Chief Tazi.
Well,
Great
good
to see
morning.
you.
Hello, good morning. Happy New Year to everybody. And thank you, Captain Sant. That was awfully kind of you. And I'd like to echo your sentiment and thank all of our elected officials for their continued support. We couldn't do it without them. The Alliance, we've got an amazing partnership. We all do in this community of ours, and I'm forever grateful. We are at Fire Rescue forever grateful for that partnership. So thank you. So in a recap, we talked over the last couple of months about how busy we've gotten, and it does look like some of our stations have gone ahead to eclipse the 7,000 mark. I know Station 45 in Kings Point, they ran just in a month of December, 588 calls, which would put them right over the 7,000 mark. And looking at my data, though, one of the things that jumped out at me that I'm concerned with, and that was the number of carbon monoxide calls. And I know this, again, is something we've talked about in the past. But when I look at it, and I look at one of my stations up on Woolbright Military, they had 7 CO calls. Station 47 over on Enterprise and the Turnpike had 4. And then I go down to the Pheasant Walk station, Station 52, they had 20 of them. That's alarming to me. And so I need to do my due diligence and start monitoring to see if it's trending upward. But I don't want to wait for that. I want to ask you to spread out to your groups or get the word out to your groups to please purchase battery-powered carbon monoxide detectors. Carbon monoxide is called a silent killer. It's a colorless, odorless gas, and it's generally produced by engines and things like that, generators, and just leaving your cars on in your garage. Nowadays, with these push to start buttons that we have in a lot of the modern automobiles, they have the little key fobs, which are neat. You either leave them in your purse or your pocket, but we're getting out of the cars and we're forgetting to shut them down. And that's a lot of times where the problem's occurring. I know the National Safety Council, the NFPA, recommends any running motor or engine, including generators, are kept at least 20 feet from the home. Palm Beach County's code is 10 feet for an installation of a standby generator. But just a good rule of thumb, you shouldn't operate any type of gas-powered blower, lawnmower, or even let your automobile run while you're in the garage. Seems silly, but we do this from time to time. We get busy. We have busy lives. So please get out to your members to do their due diligence, to do whatever safety reminders they can come up with until I can roll out our carbon monoxide safety plan, which I'll get with you, Dr. Lori, and we'll get stuff out to our membership to start working on that. I just don't want to waste any time in seeing that the health and safety is addressed for our community. So CO monitors, let's get those installed. Again, they should be at least 5 feet from the ceiling. From the floor, as it's a little bit lighter than air. We want to see them in the hallways coming off of the garages, outside the bedrooms or in the bedrooms, and of course, anywhere off the kitchen. That's about all I have. I wish everybody a happy, healthy, and safe, and look forward to joining you next month.
Thank you so much for attending, Chief Tazi. Now, because of this serious county issue that we have with the COVID vaccines, we're going to first hear from our commissioners, then from our other elected officials in the state government. So we're going to start out with our wonderful Vice Mayor, Bob Weinroth, who's going to give us an update.
Thank you, Lori, and I certainly do appreciate the opportunity to address your membership today. And together with Commissioner Sachs, who's also on today, we're going to try and give you a little bit of an update of what's going on, take a little extra time today, because I know there's a lot of frustration out in the community about the rollout of the vaccine. let me first tell you that I share your concern. The rollout has admittedly been a little bit of a bumpy ride, and I want you to understand that your county commission is really working as a support to the Florida Department of Health. The Florida Department of Health has been designated by the governor to be the primary agency for getting the vaccine out to you. So we are working diligently with them. Commissioner Sachs and I and the rest of the commission are working with our county administrator, Virginia Baker, with Dr. Alonso, to make sure that we're getting this vaccine out as fast as possible. But one of the things you need to know is that the amount of vaccine that's available right now is really very small compared to the number of residents in our state. Right now, there are only 568,000 doses, which sounds like a lot, but there are 4.5 million seniors in Florida, 400,000 of them right here in Palm Beach County. So it's a Herculean task to get this vaccine out to you, and we are doing everything in our power to set up the infrastructure. And we were sort of set back a little bit because the CDC guidelines were a little bit different in the order in which they were going to roll out the vaccine. The governor, by his executive order, made the decision to move the seniors ahead in the line, ahead of some of the other people that were going to be, according to CDC guidelines, getting the vaccine first. And while the governor's intentions are good to make sure that you as a senior are getting the vaccine early, especially since the vaccine is going to hopefully stop you from getting this virus and any of the problems that are caused by the virus and perhaps have to be hospitalized. The fact is that to get 450,000 people vaccinated quickly is really very difficult. But Commissioner Sachs and I have been working diligently, and we have been getting with the county commissioner a process to get the vaccine into communities. And as you've probably heard, the governor is also working with Publix and other organizations to be able to roll out the vaccine over the next few weeks. The fact is, everybody's not going to be able to get the vaccine the first day, the first week, or the first month. This is going to take several months. As of Monday, just over 15,000 Palm Beach County residents had been vaccinated. Now, the people in Palm Beach County are being vaccinated with the Moderna vaccine. There are two vaccines right now that have been approved. There's the Moderna vaccine and there's the Pfizer vaccine. And both of these have been approved in what's been called an emergency use authorization, which means they're not really approved, but they're giving the authorization to use them because of the emergency we're in. So if you have any questions whether you should be taking the vaccine, you need to talk to your primary care physician and determine whether this is appropriate for you. Now, many of you have tried to make contact with the Department of Health to make your appointments. And right now, you must make an appointment to get the vaccine. You can't just walk up and ask to have the vaccine administered. Now, the phone lines at the Department of Health essentially melted down. So many people were calling that there was just not enough capacity, and they are not taking phone calls anymore. There is an email, and I'm going to give you the email, and I'm going to say it twice because it's not an easy address, but you need to send your email to CHD50feedback, that's FEEDBACK at FLHealth, HEALTH.gov. I'm going to repeat that because it's a little complicated and it's important because that's the way that you need to send your email to the Florida Department of Health. Again, CHD50 feedback, FEEDBACK at, with the @ sign, FLHealth, HEALTH.gov. That's an email address. There is no form that you're going to see. When you're sending your email, include your name, your phone number, your date of birth, and if you're sending this for someone else, put the email contact that that person has so that the Department of Health can respond back to them by phone or by email. Now, when you send that email, you should get an automatic response back confirming that they've received the email. And then a Florida Department of Health person will get back to you within hopefully a week or so. I'm sorry, that's what's going on at the Florida Department of Health. They will get back to you, and as appointment slots are available, they'll offer those to you. No vaccines are being given without an appointment. Now, I know, again, this is very frustrating, but, please realize that we've been in this now for less than a year. I know it feels like it's been many more than just a 1 year. The fact that we have a vaccine, the fact that it's already being administered, and the fact that you're going to be able to have access to the vaccine, and it's a two-step process. Remember that you're going to have to come back a second time if you get the Moderna vaccine within 28 days. If you go down to the counties to our south, Miami-Dade or Broward, and some of our residents have been going down there because they've heard that the vaccine is more readily available. And in fact, yesterday, Memorial Hospital did put out an advice that they do have the vaccine. If you're inclined to go down there, then you can contact Memorial Hospital, or you can try and get the vaccine down in Miami-Dade or Broward. But understand they have a different vaccine than what we have up here in Palm Beach County. We have the Moderna vaccine. They have the Pfizer vaccine. Why is that important? Number one, your booster is going to have to be the same vaccine you had the first time. And the second thing is the Pfizer vaccine, you get your booster after 21 days. The Moderna vaccine, you get after 28 days. Now, I know this is a lot of information, and I know Commissioner Sachs is going to follow me, and I'm sure she's going to have some additional information. My office is there to assist you. Commissioner Sachs is there to assist you. Understand we are in a support role to the Department of Health. We cannot send your information to them. We cannot get you an appointment, but we can give you the information you need, and we are working very, very hard to get this rolled out as quickly as possible, set up pods within the communities so that you have greater access to the vaccines. So I'm going to stop there. Lori, thank you so much for giving me the extra time. And, I'll be here if you want to open up for questions, or again, my office, if you want to contact us, 561-355-2204, and Commissioner Sachs, just add on one digit, 2205. So thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you very much for attending and giving us that information, Vice Mayor Weinroth, and we will get that email out to our email list. They'll know that one for the Florida Health that they can email along with the information they have to give. Now, what we'll do is we're going to our wonderful Commissioner Maria Sachs from District 5.
Hi, good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you, Vice Mayor Weinroth. Your presentation was very, very informative. I want to let everybody know that President Vinokur has been an extremely strong advocate to my office, and I'm sure to Vice Mayor Weinroth's office, in advocating for the vaccine to come as soon as possible to the people of the Alliance. And I want everybody to understand also that no one here is going to be the first, but no one's going to be the last. The vaccines are available. We just need to get them rolled out into the state of Florida. It's not like we have a limited supply, and unless you get them right away, it'll go away. There are vaccines available in the country. It comes from the federal government down to to the Florida Department of Health, down to the Palm Beach County Department of Health. And they will be given out in an orderly and democratic way. I want to thank also Dr. Lena Alonso from the Palm Beach County Department of Health. She has been extremely helpful in understanding how to mobilize all of the people in Palm Beach County who are eligible to receive this vaccine. And we have to understand there's 188,000 people in the county who are eligible to receive this vaccine now. So in due time, everyone will get this vaccine who are eligible to receive this vaccine in our county. Right to date, as of last night, 15,172 people who qualify have already received the vaccine. That only means that it's a beginning. We have it and it will be given, and everyone will have an opportunity to receive it. In the meantime, even if you do get the vaccine, you still have to wear a mask. You have to wash your hands. You have to follow all the CDC requirements. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden now you're free. You can get on an airplane and take a trip, or you can go to the store without a mask. That will not happen until after the booster is given. And then even then, I think people should be very wary and continue to wear their masks. We have started here in Palm Beach County. We started already at a couple of communities, senior communities. And what we have learned from this is this, and I know that Dr. Vineker has been an advocate for this too. It is easier to qualify to receive the limited amounts of vaccines that we have available if you already have an infrastructure set up. That is, what we don't want is for people to come helter-skelter first in line gets the vaccine. It kind of reminds me of years ago when if you were the 10th caller, you got free tickets to a concert or you got a free pizza. That's not the way this is working with the vaccinations. What we're looking for, or what the Department of Health is looking for, is those communities that can, once they receive the vaccine, will use, and thanks Chief Tazi, we're using many of the EMS officers to help administer the vaccine, an infrastructure already set up to be able to make reservations and administer the vaccine as people come for their reservations. It is it's a much more organized way. One of our prototypes for this, as you know, is Kings Point. And every day they have been able to administer. On Saturday, it was 549 vaccines. On Sunday, it was 485. And Monday was 550. I got a report last night. It was another 565 vaccines that they're able to give in an orderly way. Let us not forget that the people who are eligible have to be over a certain age and they're vulnerable. So it is better to wait a little while than to have to be bunched up in a line and then possibly get sick. So my message to everybody is use the information that was given to you by Vice Mayor Weinroth to register. If you don't immediately get through to register, it's going to be okay. We know where you're at. The vaccines will come to everybody in the community, whether they live in an HOA or a condo, where they live in a single family residence. Everyone in this county will have access to the vaccine, the first and the second. So it's coming. I want everyone to just know that and trust that we have enough vaccines for everybody, and it will happen. My office is always open. Anybody has any questions, and if you do, contact Vice Mayor Weinroth. If you can't get through, contact me. But we're out there. This afternoon, I'm going over to some of the HOAs and to check and see how the rollout is going. So I want to thank you, President Vineker, for being a good advocate and getting the message out that there's enough vaccines for everybody. And we just need to be not just be patient. I know we're all frustrated, but just know, be calm. It's coming out and it's going to take a little while. And even after you get it, you still have to be careful not to go without your mask. It's coming, and everyone will be taken care of. So with that message, I want to wish everybody a happy and healthy new year. I look forward to coming back every month and reporting that everybody, at some point, we will all be able to report that everyone has been taken care of, and we can go out and enjoy being with each other again and being able to have an in-person Alliance meeting. Thank you so much, Doctor, for allowing me to speak, and I look forward to that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Thank you very much. We have a wonderful program today with Joshua Gerstin, and he's going to be speaking about leading during this whole COVID pandemic, leading associations. So this is going to be great. But right now, we're just going to hear from two of our elected officials here. And we have Representative Skidmore, who's going to speak. And usually in the beginning of these meetings, we have the elected officials speak for 2 minutes, but our wonderful vice mayor and commissioner needed to give out a lot of information that was very important. So right now, if we can have Representative Kelly Skidmore and spotlight her. Thank you so much for coming today. Can you please give us an update at the state level?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Vinokur. Thank you, Delray Alliance, for the opportunity. I apologize for being a little casual. I'm still recovering from my elbow replacement, but I'm happy to be here this morning. We've been working hard, and we are a little frustrated. It's important that we have patience and stay calm and understand that over time, everyone will be inoculated. But at the same time, I think that, we feel a little critical of the process and that it could have been done a little more smoothly. We don't have a lot of information. There's good news and bad news everywhere. The good news is the vaccines are here. The bad news is that they're not being distributed as quickly and as efficiently as we would have liked. The good news is that there are pilot programs throughout the state where seniors are being inoculated. The bad news is that we don't understand the threshold and how they're being chosen because it's coming from the state level. So there's good news and bad news everywhere. We definitely fell short of the 50 million mark of having millions of Americans inoculated by the end of the year. But there is a lot of hard work and effort being employed by the county level, the state level, and the federal level. We could definitely have better communication. We sure could use some additional information. We have no idea when the physicians are going to get their doses. And as you know, the priority right now is hospital frontline workers, first responders, and the elderly. So your local physician is not getting inoculated and is not getting his or her vaccines to be able to distribute them right now. So that's a little frustrating because that just seems sort of a natural network and framework to be able to deliver to the masses. So we're working hard to make sure that that happens as quickly as possible. We're working with the Department of Emergency Management and the Florida Department of Health. Again, good news, bad news everywhere, but appreciate the leadership of the Alliance. Your letter to the governor was spot on. And we know that he is, his priorities are being dictated by the federal government as well. So it's not all just his decision on the priority list. But we will work within the framework that we have and continue to expedite and ramp up so that everyone has some level of comfort that they know they're going to be inoculated sooner rather than later. And that seems to be, taking up the majority of our time in our legislative offices. We're getting hundreds of phone calls and emails, and we know that everyone is anxious, and we're hoping that we will be able to ramp up soon and assuage everyone's concerns and fears. But as Commissioner Sachs, Senator Sachs said, this is not a time to once you get the vaccine, to think that it's all safe. You have to continue applying the CDC guidelines for wearing your mask, washing your hands, social distancing. If you don't need to go out, don't go out. We are still at a very high positivity rate. It continues to grow. We do not have our arms around this right now. So for those of you who are able to stay at home and have your groceries delivered or have, help, please do that and stay safe. Hope everyone has a wonderful 2021. We're off to a good start, and hopefully we'll soon, in the next few months, have a lot more freedom.
Thank you so much, Representative Skidmore, for that information. And before we go to our main speaker of the day, Joshua Gerstin, we have our property appraiser here who asked for a couple of minutes to explain a few things that we should know about.
Great.
So we're spotlighting, yes, Dorothy Jacks. Thank you for coming today.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori. It's so good to be with you and be with the Alliance. Always nice to be here. I very quickly wanted to cover a couple things that are going on right now. The most important thing is it's homestead season. I know all we're thinking about is the virus and the vaccine, and we are in our office as well, but we're also processing homestead applications for 2021. Everyone who has a homestead will have received one of these cards just a couple days ago. It's a pink card. We call it the pink card. This is actually mine that comes to my home. I always like to get one just to make sure my name is not upside down or something. So I hope you all got it who've had homestead. What I really want you to ask you to do is speak to your new residents. So anybody who has joined your community over the last year, and I know we've had a lot of people coming down, especially from up north, but certainly anybody moving in your community who has joined your community, remind them to file for homestead exemption now. The deadline to file is March 1st. Not the end of March, but actually the end of February. So it's really January and February. We want to stress that you get on in and file for homestead. Now your options are really, you have many options to file. And we, of course, right now are encouraging everyone to use our online filing system, which is available at my website. And I'm going to put that in the chat so that you have the website link. And you can go there. It just says e-file homestead. Click on that and it steps you through it. It's as simple as it gets. You can do it 24/7. You can do it in your pajamas at night. You don't have to come downtown. That's what we like about it. And I'll tell you, if you are struggling at all with using the system, you can just call our office and we'll actually walk you through it while you're actually filling out the form. So if there's any questions, don't feel like you're alone, at your computer having to use this online system. You can call us and we'll actually walk you through the steps and answer any questions you have while you're doing it. You can, of course, also come in, but we're, of course, not encouraging everybody to do that, although our office there on Atlantic and Cumberland, so right there by Villages of Oriole, next door to the sheriff's office. I always say it's the safest office in Palm Beach County. You can come in and our staff are there and they're happy to help you. We're social distancing. Everyone's required to wear a mask, only 3 people in the office at a time. All those rules are in place, but there's plenty of places to sit down outside if you prefer that one-on-one experience. But like I said, the online site, excellent, easy to use. Please just encourage your neighbors. That's the most important thing right now. Anybody new to your neighborhood, make sure they filed for homestead. And if they need to check whether they filed, maybe they thought, oh, maybe I did that at closing, maybe I didn't, sometimes there's a lot of forms, just call us and we'll tell you right away whether they filed or not. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to be here for. I wanted just to say Happy New Year. I was very thrilled yesterday to be sworn into office again for my 2nd term. So that was exciting. And I'm happy to serve Palm Beach County and you, most importantly, for another 4 years. So thank you so much. Thank you always to the Alliance. As you know, our own Mike Pratt is almost always at your meetings. And we're looking forward to the day when we can have a table in the back of the room again and help you file homestead right there in person. But until then, we'll look forward to seeing you either online or in our Delray office. Thanks so much. Thanks, Lori, for the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for attending and for that update and that valuable information. Well, we're now going on to our main meeting, and this is super important because Joshua Gerstin is going to be telling us at least the top 10 most pressing issues for community associations in the new year, for sure. Joshua Gerstin is my alma mater, Rutgers College, New Brunswick, graduate with honors in communication. And he has his Juris Doctorate from Cardozo School of Law, Yeshiva University, New York. And he has been awarded board certification by the Florida Bar in condominium and plan development law. An excellent, excellent attorney. We're going to spotlight Joshua Gerstin right now, and we're going to hear his terrific presentation. The top 10 most pressing issues for community associations in the new year. Joshua Gerstin.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you to the Alliance for having me, and happy and a healthy new year to everyone. And thank you for participating in this brief little seminar. What I'm going to do today is go over the top 10 most pressing issues that community associations are going to face, primarily due to COVID-19. COVID-19 is going to leave a mark, so to speak, people say. And the question is, how are community associations going to adapt to that? Believe it or not, there are some positive things that community associations will adapt to after COVID-19 is long gone. And we're going to try to focus on those and see where it takes us. Lori, I'm going to go over a presentation with you, and Lori is going to email the presentation to everyone that's in attendance after the meeting today, so you'll have it. You also can ask questions while I'm speaking, and if the question is pertinent to the material that I'm going over at the time, I'll grab it and answer it. If not, at the end, I will happily go over this go over all the questions and answer as many as I can. And as a side note, on gerstin.com, on the front page, top right, you could also click to get this presentation. So without further ado, let me see if I can share the screen with you here. Okay. Okay. Okay, there you go. So the first thing that everyone might notice is Zoom meetings, a meeting like we're on today. A lot of community associations have been using Zoom meetings for membership meetings as well as board of directors meetings. I'm going to first address membership meetings. During the pandemic, it was fairly easy to implement Zoom video conferencing for members meetings because of the emergency declaration by Governor DeSantis. At some point in time, though, that emergency declaration is going to expire. And when that expires, community associations will no longer be able to have member meetings through Zoom unless they make a change to their governing documents. Some community associations can do it via rule. Other community associations will actually have to do a formal document amendment. As communication goes, Zoom is great for members that can't leave their home or do not want to leave their home. However, after the emergency declaration expires, associations are going to have to consider whether or not they can and want to count quorum by people that are attending, or do they still want limited proxies to be mailed in? There are other such concerns. You should check with your lawyer, but the time to do that is now, because once the emergency declaration expires, you'll be left flat-footed. Meanwhile, members will be unable to participate. They've grown accustomed to it. The next aspect is the Zoom, hold on a second. Okay. There you go. Is the Zoom meetings for directors. And I'm right over here. Yeah. Okay. Zoom meetings for directors. Now, Zoom meetings for directors have worked out perfectly. There's all that was needed typically was a resolution based on the governor's emergency declaration, and directors were able to fully participate and run their community associations without worrying about exposure. However, once the emergency declaration expires, directors are not going to be able to appear by video conference unless a rule change or governing document change is implemented. The law does allow for directors to attend via telephone. So I do think that with a slight rule change, directors can continue to attend by video conference. However, the association is going to have to discuss quorum. In my opinion, it's important to have at least a quorum of the directors actually attending a meeting in person. If boards want to have a situation where directors can continue to attend meetings and almost nobody will be there, special considerations have to come into play. My advice, and I always recommend you check with your attorney, is to have the eligibility for directors to appear via Zoom, but they would have to book their appearance on Zoom so that an attendance by at least a quorum of directors, physical attendance, is still met. Okay, now the next aspect is recording Zoom meetings. Like this meeting here is being recorded. It's a sort of, do darned if you don't, darned if you do type situation. Once you hit record as a community association, you're creating an official record that has to be maintained for at least 7 years. Why does it have to be maintained for at least 7 years? Well, you might be doing quorum counting on Zoom. If you go the member meeting route and you decide that members can attend and count, they don't have to mail in a limited proxy. If somebody challenges the meeting, they're going to challenge the quorum and they're not going to have the limited proxies to look at. So if you're not able to produce the recording in which you verified every single member up to the point where you have a quorum, you're going to have a problem. Recording Zoom meetings, though, can be made easy if the board establishes a policy and that policy is given to either the technical person that's running the show or the property manager, so they know that they can download those recordings and safeguard them. As we cruise right along here, the next aspect is vaccines. Everyone's talking about vaccines, and our local leadership is working very hard to get them into everyone's arms. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like anybody's turning into a zombie, and it's going to be a great thing. So I'm looking forward to that. And the question is, though, can community associations mandate vaccines for common area access? That is a question that has not yet been decided by Florida law. I can tell you that if you're a private corporation and you don't have housing or other type situation, such as, let's say, my law office, I would be able to prohibit people from coming into my office if they didn't have a vaccine. Now, that's not something I would do, but when you take it one step further, a clubhouse, it's considered for fair housing public accommodation. Whether or not you can restrict somebody who doesn't have a vaccination, is that some sort of fair housing issue, problematic? They've got rights as it relates to declarations, and no declarations allow for barring somebody if they don't have a vaccination. There is also a situation as it relates to medical information. Having that medical information poses a liability on many community associations. And they're going to have to safeguard that information and only give it out to those who absolutely need to know, that they have permission to know. My advice is to stay away from mandating vaccines in the common areas. It's just going to be full of pitfalls. Instead, if community associations rightfully are that concerned, the best thing is to get vaccinated yourself. If you can get vaccinated yourself, the people who don't want a vaccine for some reason or just didn't get around to it, they won't pose a problem to you anymore. So for mandating vaccine for common areas, I recommend looking inward and giving that protection to yourself, trying to see, help your neighbors or what have you, but not mandating it. Next aspect also has to do somewhat with Zoom, and that is working from home. Majority of individuals, at least at some point in this pandemic, understood that in order to work, they had to work from home. A very large majority of those do not want to go back to work, even when it's safe. It's more convenient. They find themselves more productive. They're not in traffic. They're able to be home sooner, whatever it is. And it seems like employers are going along with it. The question is, how does that impact community associations? Community association governing documents, a lot of them do not distinguish between working from home and running a home-based business. And that is problematic because along with the professionals or people that were able to work from home, many people who lost their jobs or needed additional funds started a home-based business. Many community associations want to encourage people to work from home, but they want to discourage a home-based business where you might have excessive pickups and deliveries, excessive trash. You might even have a couple customers or clientele coming to the home in the community association. During the pandemic, everyone's doing what they can to survive. Overlooking that is understandable. But when the pandemic ends, what can you do? If your community association doesn't, if the governing documents don't distinguish between a home-based business and somebody that's working from home, you're going to have a problem enforcing against both of them. So associations should look at their governing documents and make sure their guidelines are clear that home-based businesses in which there's an excess of resources being used or excess traffic generated are something that are prohibited, whereas a distinction is made. That does not mean people that are working from home that nobody could even tell they're essentially on the phone or on the computer. That's something the association likes to have or has no problem with. But again, without that distinction, you're going to have a problem enforcing against either one of them. The next thing is the mass Yankee migration, as I call it. And with that, what we've found is we have a lot of people coming from many different states to live in South Florida, to live in Florida. Our state has been relatively open when other states are relatively locked down, and people are realizing the benefits in living in such a great state. However, it's not every person that comes down is a fit for the community association that they want to buy into. And most people, before they buy in Florida, they'll rent first. They'll rent to the community. I can't tell you how many community associations of my own that I represent have contacted me saying, this person's moving in with a dog. This person's moving in and they don't have a credit limit. This person, has a background problem. And when I look at their governing documents, I realize that they have no authority whatsoever to be doing background checks. They have no authority to limit renters. They have no authority to even interview renters. And they have absolute no authority to adjust any sort of sale that might occur, whether it's rejecting a potential purchaser, having a right of first offer to the association. However, the community associations have been enforcing these rules over the years. That has to stop. If you enforce a rule that relates to housing that you don't in fact have, or the rule is invalid, such as if you don't handle felons correctly and you just have a blanket prohibition, if you don't handle credit reports correctly, you're going to have a fair housing violation lawsuit, and it can become very expensive. I can tell you now, people are going to be moving into your association when a home sells or there's a new home on the market. And now is the time to confirm that what you think exists in your governing documents as it relates to sales and leases is in fact there. If it's not, work towards putting it in there. And in the meantime, stop enforcing things that don't exist just yet. Okay, moving right along. Neighbor versus neighbor disputes. An unfortunate part of the pandemic has been people getting upset, rightfully so, of just frustrated, and they're short-tempered, and they just don't want to hear anything from their neighbor. And there's been a lot of neighbor versus neighbor disputes. Some of it petty, and I've seen some of it where the police have to get involved. In an overwhelming majority of instances, I've noticed that my clients, before they come to me, have been somewhat involved in what is a neighbor versus neighbor dispute over a fence, a dog, something like that. And they've put themselves in these positions when they really probably shouldn't have. However, they were home, the neighbors were home, people were around, and it's understandable. But the fact of the matter is, boards should all consider and understand their role in neighbor versus neighbor disputes. And if there is not a governing document violation occurring, the association should not get involved. Okay? The association should not get involved, because once it does get involved, it opens up a whole trap of liability, especially if the association doesn't have authority over whatever the issue is. Okay? So you can also undergo a program of welcoming new people to the neighborhood, neighbor versus neighbor, discussions with people, so that there's a better feeling coming over the community association, and so that their first call is not to you. I know it's difficult to say, there's nothing that you can do, but that's really what you have to do as a director. The financial strain of the pandemic. It seems like on the community, with the community associations I represent, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen the increased collections. I haven't seen the increased bankruptcies, and I haven't seen the foreclosures. I think partly that is due to the moratoriums that are in place. And even though the moratoriums only apply to properties with federal loans on them, I think that a lot of landlords decided, hey, we're not going to do this, or a lot of banks said, we're not going to do this, we're going to wait. So once all those moratoriums are lifted and they're in the process of it, and people getting all their ducks in a row if they can't work things out, we're going to see an increase in foreclosures, no doubt. We're also going to probably see an increase in collection if there's no further stimulus. There was that one stimulus package early on, and there was that other one recently for $600. But as we all know, although a lot of money, it's really not that much money, and people are treading water. There should be most likely an increase in collections. When this same set of circumstances occurred, obviously without the pandemic, but a economic decline in 2008, 2009, I can tell you that my associations were overwhelmed with just collections, zombie houses, a lot of stuff, safe harbor issues, all of that. And at the time, the associations found themselves flat-footed. They didn't have good collection policies. I have some associations where they can't start collection efforts until after the association itself sends out letters for 90 days. After 90 days, you're so far behind in the collections, it's very damaging. Other ones have certain procedures that they have to follow before the collections take place, or they have to respond in a certain manner, or their lien is of an inferior position as it relates to subsequent debtors. These are things that the association should look at by going to its attorney, asking the attorney to review the collection procedures, and in anticipation of an increase in collections and bankruptcies, for the attorney to make recommendations and implement those recommendations. I'm not saying to get tougher, but I am saying a unified, systematic approach will have an effect on the association's bottom line, where people that are paying won't have to pay more because the association is running a deficit. Okay. Governing document enforcement. Okay, during the pandemic, and rightfully so, many community associations weren't enforcing their governing documents the way that they were in the past. People were allowed to park in certain areas without getting towed. People were allowed to have certain changes made that they ordinarily wouldn't be allowed. Certain behavior was allowed. That's understandable. But community associations have to be very concerned about waiver. That is, if you know of a violation and you don't enforce it, you're going to waive the right to do that. Or you have to worry about selective enforcement. Whereas you have somebody that behaved a certain way, you allowed it. Now that the pandemic is over, somebody is behaving in that same way and you want to enforce against it. That person that you're trying to enforce against will rightfully say this is selective enforcement. So what do you do? So what associations need to do is consider which restrictions they were soft on. Have an honest conversation with yourself. Say, hey, yeah, we sort of let that by. We didn't let that go by. and then speak with your attorney about sending a letter to the community, gently notifying them that, hey, the pandemic occurred. I'm just letting you know these restrictions have not been waived. We're going to have to step up our enforcement now that the pandemic is somewhat gone or things are getting back to normal. That's very important to do, and that letter will have legal significance, and it will ensure the community association that defenses such as selective enforcement or waiver don't become problematic. Finally, the last thing here is pets, and more pets. The pandemic, something that I think is great. I'm a dog lover. The pandemic brought many pets into new homes. And community associations might have found themselves flat-footed, where they have no way to track pets. They have no rules regarding pet waste. They allow pets when their association doesn't say they can have pets, and they never enforce against that. They have others that they're waiting for emotional support information. Pets are coming, pets are here. If you don't enforce against it, you're going to waive your right to do so. So now is the time for the associations. Look at your governing documents, set up a tracking system where you can track the number of pets people have. You can make sure they're vaccinated. If you are in a no pet facility and somebody doesn't have an emotional support pet, you need to make sure that you could enforce against that, or as an association, get the proper information from these people to document the pet as an emotional support pet. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem enforcing pet restrictions in the future. So go to your attorney. They should have a package of some sort of typical rules that they advise associations to implement them. Check them against your rules, put in place what you need, because people love their pets and they go to crazy degrees to keep their pets. And most associations don't mind pets if they're well behaved. So there's a way to go about doing it, and the time to do that is now. So again, Lori's going to be sending this. I'm going to stop sharing here. Lori's going to be sending the letter there that I was just going over the proposal. It's available on my website. And what I can do now is I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gerstin. Yes, you know, we have a Q&A section here, and there are no questions here. And I know it's working because we did have one statement from somebody. So there's somebody who raised her hand, one of the participants, the attendees. However, that person did not actually just print out a question and answer. So we don't bring the attendees on as panelists. So right now we don't have anything. Okay, well, let's see if anyone changes their mind and if they have any questions, my information you'll see on the package. You can always contact the you, Lori, you could forward them on to me. I'll be happy to answer them. Actually, I see a question here. Yes, one just came on. Maybe she went and asked and started to print. Okay, we have a few people printing out some now. We're going to give them a few minutes to do this. Go ahead, Joshua, and you can read them and
Sure.
And handle. Thank you.
The question is, how much time must pass when a rule has been forgiven or for the HOA to be required to forgive the rule? And that's a really good question. And there is no set answer. It's really fact specific. If somebody has had something for a year, okay, you lose certain rights as it relates to specific performance, where you can't go to court and require the court to enforce against that rule. Now, whether they're allowed to keep violating that rule, that's not what specific performance is about. But I would start saying that about at the year point, you could start seeing your ability to say, hey, this is a valid rule. You could start seeing that be diminished. Now, keep in mind that you have waiver and you also have selective enforcement. So as soon as you decide not to enforce against somebody, even if it was only for a month or what have you, and now you decide to enforce against somebody the proper way, that person's going to have a selective enforcement argument, and that starts immediately. So I would recommend sending out that letter, telling them the documents are going to be enforced, and you can forestall the waiver problem and the selective enforcement problem. Okay. Now there's from Arobi, and it says, with regards to clubhouse reopening, I've got an article on my website about clubhouse reopening. I don't really know what your question is in particular. Maybe you could pose it again. But as far as reopening clubhouses are concerned, there is a safe way for community associations to do that. It involves posted rules, following CDC guidelines, as well as various checks on members coming in and out, as well as enforcement of those rules. There's some guidelines that I have on my website. You can check it out or contact me directly. I can tell you that my office represents about 200 community associations, and fair to say about 3/4 of the ones with clubhouses have the clubhouses open with restricted activity. Okay. The question is, what about annual meetings? We have a date in our docs, but cannot find a safe way to do it. Well, until the emergency declaration from Governor DeSantis expires, you can postpone your annual meeting. So what you would do is you would have a board meeting and pass a resolution saying, due to COVID-19 and our population, we're concerned, we just do not want to have this annual meeting, and you postpone it for a date certain. But you're eventually going to have it at a point in time. And for associations having it now, I can tell you that probably about 95% of my community associations are having their member meetings and their director meetings. The member meetings, if there's nominations needed from the floor, they're awkward and they're clunky, but they are able to be done in a safe manner that community associations can continue operating in that way. However, though, Phyllis, I do understand exactly your sentiment, and I do have associations with a certain demographic where it's not even worth the risk. And for those, just have a board meeting via Zoom, pass a resolution postponing the meeting, state the date and time of the new meeting, and take it from there. If things aren't good when you have the new date and time and the emergency declaration is still in place, you're allowed to postpone it again. Okay. Okay, the next question is from, what is the latest ruling when the board is told that a homeowner has COVID to inform the community? The board does not have a responsibility to inform its other members that someone in the community has COVID. However, some communities set it up that way that they do have that responsibility, and it's an enormous responsibility. Some community associations decided that that was what they were going to do. Now that when people are telling them, they have to notify the community as promised in the rule. Generally speaking, though, if they're informed the member has COVID-19, the community property manager can keep an eye out for that person, make sure that person doesn't go to the clubhouses, send that person a letter saying that we don't want them near any public areas or anything else like that. But the community association should, in no uncertain terms, identify that person by name. If you want to tell people that there is somebody in the community that has it, I'm not too sure of the value of that, because if you want to conduct yourself in a safe way, you should assume everyone has it, right? But if your community wants to notify them of a certain population has it, a certain percentage has it, that's fine. The community can do that. But identifying the name of the person or where that person lives is problematic, and is probably going to get the association sued. Again, if the property manager sees a person in the common elements, the property manager has the right to absolutely throw them off the common elements, prohibit them from the common elements. But as far as notifying anybody, name, address, or other identifying information should not be done. Okay. What do we need to do to restrict the clubhouse in a limited way? Fairly simple. The board just needs to pass rules that follow the CDC guidelines and then enforce those rules. And as long as the governor's emergency declarations stay in effect, you can enforce these rules. And the rules relate to hours of operation, mode of operation. I've written rules that extend as far out as, the bocce court, pickleball courts, tennis courts. Every community association clubhouse is a little different. But what you want to do is work with your attorney. The board can pass these rules. They won't need member involvement because they're temporary emergency rules, and follow the CDC guidelines. There's a wealth of information available on my websites, other websites, about how community associations are doing this successfully. I have yet to hear, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I've yet to hear community association being the point of being a super spreader event, something where they've been traced it back to. Now, of course, the virus is going to be the virus, but to me, that means a lot of this information is getting out, and you can do it relatively cheaply, but it does require some effort and rules. Rather than eliminating a person from an amenity, can you shut down that amenity? Well, if you see an infected person, right, come into your clubhouse, instead of throwing that person out, can you shut it down? Well, yes, you can. If you think that person was, in the card room doesn't have good ventilation, a person maybe wasn't wearing a mask like they should, which would be in your rules, the person was generally just acting selfish, yes, you can shut down amenities. You can keep amenities shut down for as long as the emergency declaration from the governor remains in place. Whether or not you want to just permanently shut everything, that I'm not a fan of that, to be honest with you, but every community association is different. And some of them have really large common areas. So if they shut one, you don't really notice it one, you could shut parts. Other ones though might just have a room somewhere. Like a very nice room, but just like a room somewhere limited. And for those, yes, I think shutting it down may be the only way until this is done to actually be able to regulate it. So it's going to depend on the community association. I tend towards banning that person from coming back while they're still infectious, but yes, you can in fact shut it down until the declarations expire, emergency declarations from the governor. What enforcement recommendations do you have to encourage residents and visitors to wear masks on condo premises? Community associations can only enforce against violations that relate to common elements, okay, and common areas. So if somebody's walking, let's say, in front of their home and they own the sidewalk and they don't have a mask on, there's nothing that community association can do. But I can tell you that the community association absolutely has a right to throw somebody out of a clubhouse, out of the pool, or just out of the bocce court, out of the pickleball court, if the rules regarding COVID-19, including masks, are not followed. And the association can also have a board meeting and suspend that person for X amount of time if that person's not following the guidelines. There's a fine line between requiring, masks are a big issue. And there's a fine line when requiring masks outdoors when they're necessary and science follows it, and people that just want people to be masked all the time. I can tell you that if you want to enforce masking and you want people to follow it, being too extensive on the masking and something that's not backed by science is going to be problematic. If somebody's using the common elements, they should be signing a waiver. If I want to use the pickleball court, and by the way, believe it or not, I'm an ace in pickleball. I'll beat anyone that's on this meeting. But nonetheless, if people want to use pickleball courts, they should be signing a waiver, okay? And if they're signing a waiver and they're participating in pickleball court and there's no other, adjacent courts and it's one court outside and the other person they're playing with signed a waiver, whether or not you want them to wear a mask outside, it's going to be tough getting that compliance because the science isn't there. So it's sort of a fine line, but I can tell you that if you set down a rule, you can enforce it. And then if the person breaks that rule, you can suspend them from using the common areas. Can we vote by mail only on Zoom? The question is, can we issue our votes only on Zoom? The law is not really there yet, and that's a very intelligent question. However, I think that if you pass the right rules, you would probably be able to have limited director voting via Zoom, okay? And that would be if there's maybe a quorum that is in physical attendance and there's maybe one or two directors on Zoom. If you record that meeting, I think that's possible because again, the law allows directors to call in. So, an extension of that would be a director voting, sure. Now, member meetings, I think having members vote for an amendment to a declaration or to reduce reserve amounts, partial payment of reserves, I think things like that, you can coordinate a way to have that on Zoom, verified on Zoom. You would have to verify everybody on Zoom. You'd have to record the meeting. and you would have to make that recording available. It'd be quite extensive, but I think that definitely can be done. However, elections, voting for directors, voting on Zoom is not going to be allowed by law, and that's something that you should stay away with. So I would focus on directors being allowed to vote by Zoom by having a rule change, and then focusing on limited members being able to vote by Zoom. One thing that I think would make it very easy is, instead of having members vote by Zoom, allow your members to be considered in attendance for quorum purposes via Zoom, but all their votes get mailed in to you so that you can keep them, and you'd have an accurate count, and there wouldn't be any problem that way. But it's something to be considered, and it's a great question. If you haven't enforced the rules for a long period of time, this is from Mr. Rosenthal, can you give a notice that then it says 2 months the rules will be enforced? Yes, that was the notice that I was contemplating when I said, hey, you're going to want to tell people that due to the pandemic, you've been a little lax, you're trying to be kind-hearted, and now you want to go back enforcing. I wouldn't tell them, though, that you're going to start enforcing it in 2 months, because then everyone's going to be violating everything like crazy for 2 months, and you're almost in a way giving them a right, so to speak, to actually violate the rules for 2 months. I would recommend telling them that, as of this date forward, these rules are going to be enforced, and set a date that's in the very near future. Of course, everything, it depends on the fact-specific situation. Telling people they can't park in a location might take a few more days so they can adapt to it, as compared to telling people, at what time they have to close their garage doors or something similar like that. So 2 months is too long, but in either way, a letter should go out telling them we've been lax due to COVID, and now we're enforcing again. Okay, now. Okay.
Joshua, just want to tell you that there are 2 more questions here, because people have just been asking, about, I want to make sure that your time is, you have to go to court, you have people to see.
There's no court, thanks to Zoom. Thanks to COVID, I could do that on Zoom, but I'd like to do this. So you know what? I got a few more here. I love doing this stuff, and I'll be happy to answer it if you don't mind.
Thank you. Go ahead. That's great. Just to let everybody know, we have 2 questions there, but we could start to wrap it up. There's 2 more questions, and then, if anybody has any final ones, please write them now. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll do a last call, so to speak. Okay, it says here, are masks important if walking in the pool? We wear them on the deck. Does it matter in water or outside? That is really a question for a doctor to ask, or a virologist to ask. I can tell you, based upon the science, that if you're wearing them in a pool, okay, it doesn't really make much sense. It probably can be dangerous. If you're going to go in the pool and you want to be protected, the best way to do so is to stay 6 feet away from anyone else that's in the pool. If the closer you are to people for a prolonged period of time, the more likely it is that you're going to catch it. In a pool, I believe it's less likely that you'll catch it, because the droplets from people's respiratory system, the water actually that's in the air that's all around, would weigh it down. And that's why in humidity as well, you have those droplets, they're lighter than air, the air weighs them down. That happens in a pool, but it's far from foolproof. So the best thing is, if you're not comfortable and you're actually considering wearing a mask in the pool, you probably should stay out of the pool. Let's be honest, nothing's worth that risk. And if you have that much of a concern that you'll have such a negative effect or impact from the virus if you get it, I would stay out of the pool. And if you're going to go in the pool and you're just average concerned about getting the coronavirus, I would wear the mask on the deck and stay away from people that are, when you are actually in the pool, the best you can. Okay. All right. Well, I got some compliments there. That's great. And then the next, and Phyllis, the wrap-up question, I guess, was she was talking about voting in the elections for mail-in ballots. I can tell you, Phyllis, that you can, with a rule change, probably have your members vote for document amendments and reserves, but voting in an election via Zoom is not going to work. There is an electronic voting law that associations can follow, where they get specific software that follows certain guidelines, and there are vendors that can walk you through it, and you can actually vote online. But just taking Zoom and saying, hey, I vote, without anything different, not going to happen for elections. may be allowable with a rule change in your documents for document amendments and other things like that. During pandemic, can reserve fund money be diverted to what we need to do now? The answer to that question is no, and that's not without a member approval to do that. That would be normal. You can't take reserve funds out or take a loan from reserve funds. You would still need a majority of members to change over to that. However, some associations are unable to get loans because they need to get member approval. Most likely, and I would have to look at your governing documents, most likely your association would be able to bypass that and procure a loan to carry you over whatever problems that you have, or a mortgage on a property carry over any problems that you have without having to get the necessary member approval due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the emergency declarations do not allow you to use different funds from different parts of reserve towards the pandemic. However, a bank loan has been made much easier due to the emergency declarations.
Joshua, there was one question that came from elsewhere, from our other chat. Just what's the difference between a service dog and an emotional support dog? If you could just go over that definition.
Absolutely. And this is really the bane of my existence. A service dog is literally declared in the law as a dog that's trained for a specific life-saving behavior, but the standard is you know it when you see it. So if somebody is walking with a cane and they're going side to side, they have dark glasses on and they have a dog, that's a service dog. And you're not allowed to ask that person why they have that service dog. Same thing if you might see somebody in a wheelchair and they'll have a dog that's there, and the dog is there just in case that person has an episode of whatever ailment it is. That's a service dog, and you're not allowed to ask that person what their ailment is because you can see it. Okay. Now, an emotional support animal is an animal that is not specifically trained to really do anything. It's an animal that the owner claims gives them emotional support, and that is backed up by a doctor's note or a medical provider's note. Inquiring as to the disability, inquiring as to the doctor that wrote the note, inquiring as to a few other things related to an emotional support pet are allowed. And there are some more restrictions that you could implement against emotional support animals. Service animals, you cannot restrict them. You can't charge excess fees. You can't do anything. So service animals that provide a trained service that you can tell, and if you really can't tell, you can inquire, but most of the times you can. Those are different. You really can't enforce against those at all. Emotional support animals, off the top of, looking at its face here, you can see that it's not a service dog. You could inquire about it, and there are some other restrictions that you can implement. So if you've been reading the news lately, you'll see that a lot of airlines now are banning emotional support animals. So the gentleman or woman that is blind can still have their service animal on board, but you're no longer going to see people with their pet pigs or their gigantic Rottweilers sitting on their lap while they're flying.
Oh, looks like one last question here, and I don't know if it really has to do with the COVID but this might be something you could answer.
What is your thoughts on reserves being pooled rather than kept separate? Thank you for that question. I prefer reserves be pooled because it gives more flexibility to the association, as long as everyone at a certain point in time, every reserve component at every certain point in time is not in the red. You could sort of borrow, I guess, on paper from the painting reserve to help pay for the driveway reserve, because painting is still going to have enough money in it. And that's something that affords great flexibility. Without that, you might have a situation where the painting is in a surplus, the paving's not, and the paving needs to be done now, and you can't borrow the money or take the money from one reserve component to another without member approval, which sometimes you will not get. So the flexibility that's afforded by pooling reserves is great. Pooling reserves does not mean, though, you could use any of the pooled funds for non-reserve items. You still have to use them for the reserve items, but nonetheless, much more flexibility.
Okay.
Will this meeting be archived for later viewing? from James Johnson. That depends on the purpose of the later viewing. If it's to make fun of me or draw faces, no. But other than that, Lori, I think you'll post it somewhere.
Yes, this will go on YouTube for sure. Yes, this is what we do every month.
Okay.
So we're oh, it looks number 20. It looks like another question. Oh, Terry Mitzi, hello from Representative Skidmore's office says thank you. Terrific.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank
And
you.
Jim Rosenthal from Lexington Club, hello. He says super informative.
Nice.
And also, you know, Mike and Katie Adler, yes, from Evergreen, and they say good job. Joshua, Mr. Hot Rod, terrific. Thank you so much.
I know who that is.
Yes, thank you so much. And just one announcement about next month's meeting. It's going to be another terrific meeting. This was fantastic. Next month, thank you so much, Joshua Gerstin. And for next month, we will be having our brand new clerk and comptroller, Joe Abruzzo, giving us an overview of his new office. And someone just asked me the address for the video. It will be sent on our Alliance email list. And if you don't have our Alliance email, if you're not on the list, just send me your email address. Everybody knows how to get in touch with me, and you can, then we'll put you on the list. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's just make sure we finished up with everything here. And Ann Caro, thank you, Joshua, outstanding. That's another one. We just want to make sure that Joshua gets all of his accolades that are due him. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chief Tazi, for staying on here and
Yes, thank you.
And listening. And it's so much information. And thank you to my co-host, Paul Finkelstein, who's been spotlighting everybody and working on the questions too, and helping us with this co-hosting of this meeting. We'll see you all next month. And remember about the virtual HOA COA certification course for next January 14th. You still have time to register. So long.
Bye-bye.
Keep safe.